Order, order. The National Assembly is in session. Item 1, questions to the First Minister. Question 1, David Ellis-Thomas.
Diolch yn fawr ar ddirprwylywydd anrydeddus. Pa drafodaethau mae'r Prif Weinidog wedi cael gyda ysgrifennydd gwladol Cymru ar gyfer dydd Gwilddewi?
Wedi cael nifer o drafodaethau gyda'r ysgrifennydd gwladol a bydd yna drafodaeth arall yn digwydd ymellach ymlaen heddi.
O ystyried yr hyn sydd wedi gyhoeddi yn barod gan Lywodraeth y Deyrnas Unedig yn y papur gorchymyn ar yr Alban yn y Deyrnas Unedig setliad parhaol, ydy'n fwriad gan y Prif Weinidog i geisio sicrhau cymalau drafft cyffelib ar gyfer Senedd a Llywodraeth Cymru ac a gynigir i Senedd a Llywodraeth yr Alban i fod, a dwi'n dyfynnu o'r cymalau drafft, yn rhannau parhaol o drefniadau cyfansoddiadol y Deyrnas Unedig.
Dwi'n credu bod yna setiad parhaol wedi cael ei gynnig i Gymru lan i nawr. Mae cyfartaledd yn bwysig dros ben fan hyn. Beth sydd wedi cael ei gynnig i'r Alban, cael ei gynnig i Gymru ta beth. Mater wedi yw i penderfynu beth bydde o fewn diddordebau Cymru i gymryd, ond ni'n bell o'r sefyllfa hynny. Bydd ni'n parhau wrth gwrs i wario ran yn y broses sydd wedi cael ei sefydlu gan ysgrifennydd gwladol, ond mae yna peth ffordd i fynd to mwyn cael unrhyw fath o gytundeb.
Paul Davies.
Prif Weinidog, dwi'n siŵr eich bod chi wedi trafod fformwla Barnett gyda'r ysgrifennydd gwladol mewn nifer o gyfarfodydd chi wedi cael gyda gen sgil y trafodaethau hyn. Siwr chi bwriadu sicrhau cyllid teg i Gymru ynghyd destun cadw fformwla Barnett?
Wel, llawr Barnett, mae hwn yn ffordd i wneud hwn, a sicrhau bod Cymru'n cael ei gwarchod yn y dyfodol. Lan i nawr, Llywodraeth y Deyrnas Unedig ddim wedi bod yn gefnogol o unrhyw fath o ffordd o setlo'r dat gyllido mae Cymru yn dioddau ar hyn o bryd. Mae gewn ni obeithio wrth gwrs gweld rhyw fath o ffordd ymlaen dros yr wythnos nesaf.
Mike Hedges.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. After the decision yesterday, the case for a reserve powers model of devolution becomes even stronger. Will the First Minister set out the red lines he would expect from a successful St David's Day process?
I fear I may not have much time to go through every red line, but perhaps if I could inform them of some of them. A reserve powers model with the proper division between reserve powers and those powers that would remain at Westminster. Wales's funding, underfunding being addressed, that much is important. Further fiscal devolution in some fields, and of course the Assembly to control its own electoral system, including of course the entrenchment of the existence of the Assembly, so that it could not be abolished at the whim of Westminster.
Mick Antonev.
First Minister, you'll be aware of the decision yesterday, although you may not have had time to digest its detail. Good for the insurance industry, bad for asbestos victims, and confusing for devolution. On the assumption that most people consider that we should have the power to do the sort of things that the bill intended, which is help asbestos victims in Wales, how are you going to approach negotiations with the UK government to ensure that we actually do have the powers clearly, without confusion, in order to be able to do these sorts of things which most people out in the public actually think are sensible things that we should be able to do?
I'm afraid it shows the fact that the current devolution settlement is not fit for purpose. It is unclear in so many areas, and that's why, of course, all parties, I think I'm correct in saying, wish to see a move to a model that is far clearer and far more appropriate for 21st century Wales. Yesterday, of course, was a disappointment. It now needs to be rectified as quickly as possible.
Question 2, Roderick Glyn-Thomas.
A wnaeth y Prif Weinidog ddatganiad am amseroedd amser I gleifion sy'n aros am lawdriniaeth o fewn bwrdd iechyd Prifysgol Hywel Dda.
Wel, yn disgwyl I bob claf gael ei gweld gyn gynted a phosibl, yn uno, wrth gwrs, ac yn uno a'i blaenoriaeth glinigol, yn ogystal â chael ei gweld o fewn amseroedd amser hwyaf Cymru.
Dath un o'n etholwyr I weld fi yn ddiweddar, fe roedd wedi mynd I weld I feddyg teulu 2 flynedd yn ôl gyda problem hernia. Ac heb glywed ddim byd fe geisiodd gael gwybodaeth oddi wrth y llawfeddyg ar ysbyty pryd bydde fe'n cael ei gweld. Fe gafodd o wybod, I fod wedi bod i weld i feddyg teulu yn Ebrill 2013 nad oedd e ddim wedi cael i anfon ymlaen yn ysbyty tan fis Ebrill y llynedd. Ac na fydde fe ddim yn cael ei weld tan fis Mehefin eleni. Be allwch chi fel Llywodraeth wneud i sicrhau nad yw'r oedi yn digwydd rhwng y meddyg teulu a'r llawfeddyg ac wedyn o fewn yr ysbyty?
Anodd iawn wrth gwrs i roi unrhyw barn ar sefyllfa unigol, ond mae'n swnio i fi o beth mae'r aelod wedi gweud bod rhyw broblem wedi cael ei greu rhwng y neges yn cael ei roi o'r meddyg teulu i'r ysbyty. Byddwn ni'n digon hapus wrth gwrs i ystyried yr achos dros yr unigolyn a hefyd dros yr aelod os byddai eisiau ala'r manylion iddo fi.
Angela Burns.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. I do appreciate it's difficult to comment on individual cases, but Hywel has such a track record on this in this area. 95% of patients should be waiting less than 26 weeks for treatment. And when my colleague Roderick Glyn Thomas brought this question forward, I literally had to choose between the raft of constituents in front of me, and I'm going to just pick one case of a woman who's waiting First Minister for 27 months for a follow-up pain relief injection, has just been told she has to wait another 10 months. As we all know, pain is utterly debilitating. What can you, as First Minister, do with your Minister for Health to ensure that this health board does step up to the mark and start giving people adequate treatment in a timely and kind manner?
Very difficult, of course, as the member recognises, to comment on an individual issue. I can say that median waiting time in Hywel Dda in November of last year was up to 9 weeks. That is what most people will wait, but of course there are some people who wait longer, and the member's given an example there, and I have no reason to doubt what she said to me. That goes well beyond that. Again, I make the same offer to her as I did to the member for Carmarthen East and Dunevor. If she wishes to pass on the details, I'd be more than happy, of course, to investigate.
I will now call the party leaders. First this week, Leader of Plaid Cymru, Leanne Wood.
Diolch yn fawr. I read with interest your comments in the press this morning offering advice to your party leader ahead of the coming election. And you said that we can't go into the election saying that we will be a little less tough than the Tories. As a government, what calculations have you made as to the effect on the Welsh budget of a Labour Prime Minister as opposed to a Tory Prime Minister?
I'm very glad indeed that the Leader of Plaid Cymru takes so much notice of what I say in the press, and I thank her for that. We know that roughly the difference will be, in terms of the budget, will be that the budgets of the UK government will be cut by 23% more under a Tory government than will be the case under a Labour government, a significant difference.
According to analysis from the Institute of Fiscal Studies, First Minister, they looked at your party's spending plans too over the next Parliament, and there is to be a cut of around 2.2% to devolved government's budgets over the next Parliament under a Labour government. Isn't that just a little less tough than the Tories, First Minister? No,
the Tory equivalent is 26%, if I remember rightly, for the cuts that they would make. So there's a significant difference for the people of Wales in voting in a Labour government that will look to protect those areas that are most important for the people of Wales, and the vast cuts that will be imposed by a Tory or indeed Tory-led government. And the Institute for Fiscal Studies has illustrated the significant gulf that exists between those of us who are committed to spending on those who are most in need and those who would cut budgets at a ruthless rate.
I'm not clear, First Minister, whether you're actually disputing the IFS figures or whether you're disputing your own party's spending plans. Based on current spending, a 2.2% cut from Labour equates to £335 million less for the Welsh budget for the expenditure on Welsh public services. That is more austerity, isn't it? How can people have hope when your promise to the people of Wales is more cuts, more austerity, more of the same?
Not at all. We know that the situation as far as the Tories is concerned, and this is what the Institute for Fiscal Studies said, was a 26% cut in public budgets. And that is an enormous cut that would take us back many, many decades in terms of what the state would look like. We want to address that issue. We want to make sure, of course, that we get a Barnett floor to address Wales's underfunding, which I'm sure she will support. And we have shown in the past 4 years, despite the tough budget settlements, a cut of 10% that we've received from a Tory government, that we can prioritise spending for the people of Wales. We will continue to do that in Wales, and I'm absolutely sure we will continue to see that happening in May, as long as the Tories don't win.
Leader of the Opposition, Andrew R.T. Davis.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. First Minister, the news at Ysbyty Glan-Clwyd today is very troubling, to say the least. This chamber spent a lot of time, and I know you took personal responsibility for maternity services in North Wales. What is your assessment of the current situation around maternity services at that particular hospital in North Wales?
The first thing I need to say is this does not in any way interfere with the decision on the Cyflwynir. That's important to state. My view always was that the Cyflwynir would be a new operation. It wouldn't be something that would simply be grafted onto the existing department. So I want to make that absolutely clear and to give that assurance to people in the area around Glan-Clwyd. The local health board must take responsibility. It must discharge its duties. That much is true. And I expect them to do that in the course of this afternoon. I expect them then to take steps to ensure that, that any announcement they may make is temporary, and that there's a reinstatement of the full service as quickly as possible at the hospital. They must take responsibility, and so must the senior medical staff. Many reports have illustrated the dysfunctional nature of the relationship between the senior medical staff at the hospital, and that must be dealt with. This situation, whatever decision they take, must be taken on a temporary basis, but the Cyflwynir remains on track, in my mind, for the site at Glan-Clwyd.
Well, I have to say I can hear members saying that they've made little or no progress on that particular aspect of maternity services in North Wales, First Minister. So I think maybe you need to assess how much progress has been made, despite the assurances that you have given. What is a huge concern to many people around the potential for this announcement will be the downgrading of maternity services at Ysbyty Glan-Clwyd. And ultimately, you talk of it being a temporary measure. What does the word temporary mean in this context? You're the government. What are you going to hold the health board to account if they do have to suspend services temporarily at this particular hospital? What is your interpretation?
I would expect them to look to reinstate the service in the summer of next year. It's important, of course, to make sure that all steps are taken to do that. It is simply not possible to carry on with the existing relationship between the senior medical staff in that department. Many reports have illustrated that it is dysfunctional, and those medical staff need to look to themselves in terms of the way they have worked with each other. The local health board as well have to make sure that they are able to discharge the responsibilities that they have, and I would expect them to look to reinstate this service in the summer of next year. That is the aim that they must have.
What I'm troubled by your answer, First Minister, is that you seem to be apportioning blame to the medical staff here in this particular equation, which I have to say I find surprising. And maybe in response to this third question, you could enlarge on that, because one of the key problems does seem to be the ability to attract and retain staff. And ultimately, we know that the Welsh Government have successive campaigns to attract staff here in Wales. 2 years ago, the Welsh Government, under the previous Health Minister, Lesley Griffiths, launched a campaign. It just doesn't seem to be working, First Minister, and when you made your announcement, you did highlight the ability for the Health Board to attract staff as being a key requirement to the retention of the service. Now, what interaction has the Welsh Government been having with the Health Board to make sure that they have been trying their darndest to attract staff to fill these posts that wouldn't rely on the service being withdrawn? And can you enlarge on what you've just said in your previous answers to me about clinical staff and medical staff need to look to themselves to resolve this problem?
Well, the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynaecologists have actually said this. For example, the Steele report showed in May 2013, they described, well, they went further than me, unprofessional behaviour between consultants with public disagreements, bullying and intimidating behaviour. Poor adherence to requirements for adequate notice to book and coordinate leave, leading to difficulties covering rotas and cancellation of clinics. Now, those are not my words, those are the words of the Steele report. The Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynaecologists report in 2014 also talked about problems with team dynamics, lack of engagement with governance arrangements, supervision arrangements for junior staff. So yes, there is a need amongst other, I mean, this is not entirely down to the medical staff, but they need to look at the way they've operated. There's no question about that, and these are not my words. These are the words stated in 2 reports. But the local health board also have a responsibility to make sure that they take steps, firstly, to ensure that patients are safe. That's the first thing. Secondly, to make sure that these arrangements are temporary. And thirdly, of course, to make sure that people are reassured as these arrangements move forward, that they will be able to move smoothly to give birth in the other hospitals in Betsy Cadwaladr. That is what the local health board have the responsibility to do, and we will expect them to do that.
Leader of the Welsh Liberal Democrats, Kirsty Williams.
Thank you very much, Deputy Presiding Officer. But First Minister, you took personal responsibility in May of last year to oversee the establishment of a special care baby unit at Ysbyty Glan Clwyd. And you told us then that you would be working with the Health Board to produce a business case and you would keep Assembly members updated. We have yet to see that business case, nor have you kept us updated. Now today, as we've heard, we've discovered that Ysbyty Glan Clwyd cannot provide consultant-led services because of recruitment difficulties. It is simply not credible for you to stand there, First Minister, and say that the plans for the special care baby unit will go ahead at Glan Clwyd if that hospital can't provide consultant-led services. Babies, the most vulnerable babies, will be being born in Bangor and in Wrexham, and now you're expecting them to be transferred to a special care baby unit in Glan Clwyd. It is simply not credible. Why has the plan, the business plan that you promised in May of last year, not been produced?
It is for the local health board to produce that plan. I said once again, there is no difficulty with the Saesneg on the Glan Clwyd site. I expect that plan to move forward. I expect the local health board to move that plan forward. I expect the Saesneg to be set up at Glan Clwyd. It was never the intention that the Saesneg was simply to be grafted on to the existing department for the reasons that we've seen in part today. That Saesneg has to be taken forward by the LHB, and I will certainly be, as the member has already said, I took responsibility for maternity services, not for Glan Clwyd's current maternity unit, but certainly for the Saesneg, and I want to see that Saesneg move forward with a business plan and set up.
First Minister, are you really saying that you expect consultant-led obstetrics to be delivered in Bangor and Wrexham, but the special care baby unit to be in Glan Clwyd? Because if you are, I do not know who you're getting medical advice from. But let's be honest, this isn't the only service that is currently under threat because of a difficulty that your government has had in the recruitment and the retention of staff. How confident are you, First Minister, that health boards will be able to maintain paediatric rotas later this year, and that paediatric services currently being delivered at the Royal Gwent and at Neville Hall Hospital, and paediatric services being delivered at your own District General Hospital in Bridgend and Morrison Hospital will be able to be maintained?
We are confident they will be able to be maintained. We expect the local health boards to do just that. The Leader of the Liberal Democrats misunderstands the situation at Glan Clwyd, as I said earlier on. My understanding is that the local health board wishes to be a temporary situation. We would expect them to resolve this issue in the course of this year and the Saesneg to be placed at Glan Clwyd. That is still the plan.
I'll believe your plan when I see a business case which you promised that you would be working with the health boards to deliver 9 months ago. The plan hasn't even started, and I would ask you, what have you been doing in the last 9 months to see that plan being developed? First Minister, how many other services and announcements, like the one we've seen at Glan Clwyd today, are the Welsh public going to have to endure because of a failure to recruit and retain vital staff? You said your health organisations had to go ahead to prevent the very scenario that we have seen today. How many other services will have to endure an emergency transfer or closure under your leadership?
There are no services that fall into that category. Bear in mind it's for the local health boards to resolve this issue. And thirdly, of course, there are specific reasons at Glan Clwyd why this has happened. Specific reasons. The deanery did not see training as adequate. There have been problems in the relationships between the medical staff there. Those are not my words. Those are the words of 2 different reports that have taken place. And I say once again, I expect the Saesneg to be taken forward by the local health board. We will support them where we can, and we will make sure that the Saesneg is placed at Glan Clwyd. That remains the situation. I've said it many, many times, and that is something that I expect the local health board to take forward.
Question 3 has been withdrawn. Question 4, Bethan Jenkins.
Will the Minister make a statement on open cast mining in Wales?
Well, Minerals Planning Policy Wales sets out planning policy for minerals extraction and related development. It's supported by comprehensive advice contained in MTAN 2, which sets out the policies for open cast and deep mine coal development, including issues such as buffer zones and restoration.
Thank you, First Minister. You will know as a constituency AM that concern is building up with regards to open casting. We have a report that says MTAN 2 needs repurposing, something your Minister said recently he was looking at. Your government has been sat on a request from me to call in East Pit for 2 years, something which I believe Gwenda Thomas has also requested. And we have a judgment which states clearly that responsibility for restoring oak regeneration owned sites remains with Celtic Energy. In light of all of this, would you support the calls by Weinidogion Assembly member for a moratorium on open cast sites and for a stop to current provisions so that we can have a similar moratorium as we took with regards to fracking last week?
Well, bear in mind, the moratorium wouldn't help the situation in East Pit or in Park Slip. The damage was done many, many, many years ago. At the root of the problem is the fact that not enough money was set aside to restore the site when British Coal was privatised. It was a sweetener that was put there by the then UK government to privatise open cast and not make it too expensive for the open cast operators. We now find ourselves in a situation where there is a substantial gap between the money that was set aside and the money that would now be required to restore the site. My view is this is the UK government's creation, and the UK government have a responsibility to provide the funds for the people of those areas in order for those sites to be restored. It's not good enough for them simply to say, well, sorry, it's all devolved now, it's all a matter for you. You can clear up the mess that we created. And so we will seek to engage with the UK government to make sure that they are, as my parliamentary colleague Madeleine Moon MP has done, to make sure that they realise they have a responsibility to the people who live around those sites in order to see them restored.
Lynn Neagle.
First Minister, as your personal intervention into the Celtic energy situation helped underline, there are currently huge question marks hanging over the open cast industry in Wales. A moratorium would help my constituents in Farteg, who yet again are left fighting an application that is in clear breach of MTAN 2 planning guidance. Will you listen to the growing calls now for a moratorium so that your government has the breathing space it needs to undertake the strategic review of the open cast industry in Wales that myself and others feel is absolutely vital?
Well, I say to the member that what has happened with regard to the East Pit and with Park Slip adds weight to her argument. I'll take it no further than that at this stage. What I will ask the Minister to do, or he and I will discuss this, is see what can be done in the meantime to restore confidence in the issue of open cast mining, given the current situation with regard to some sites across South Wales in particular. Not unique to Wales, but an issue that's arisen across the whole of the UK. We cannot have a situation, clearly, where we have a number of open cast sites in the future that cannot be restored because there is no money to restore them.
Antoinette Sandbach.
Well, Minister, given that, will you put all your correspondence in the public domain for the last 5 years with the UK government seeking to establish a resolution to this matter so that we can all see exactly what steps have been taken by you personally or your ministers?
Well, the responsibility lies ultimately, of course, with Oak Regeneration and with Celtic Energy, and with Neath Potobber Council in the case of Park Slip and with East Pit. Now, it is clear now that the issue is a failure in the early 1990s to secure enough money being set aside for the restoration of those sites. Either she recognises that failure or is happy to see communities live with the consequences of the failure of her party. And I say, well, she says 18 years of hanging about. I haven't been First Minister for 18 years. The Assembly hasn't been in existence for 18 years. All this happened in the early 1990s. She cannot escape, not her, but her party cannot escape responsibility for the creation of this mess. What they did was ensure that the operators did not have to put aside sufficient money for restoration in order for them to sweeten the deal for open cast mining and its privatisation. We are now dealing with those consequences, and the UK government cannot escape the consequences of the actions taken forward by their own party some 20 years ago.
Gwenda Thomas.
Will you join with me, First Minister, in congratulating Madeleine Moon, Labour MP for your constituency, for securing a Westminster debate on the 29th of January on the subject of restoration of open cast coal sites. In view of the response from the Minister of State, and I take it the party opposite will want to read that, it's well worth doing, for Business and Enterprise, the Minister of State for Business and Enterprise, through that debate, will you ask our Minister for Natural Resources to engage in any future discussions and to seek to ensure the paramount importance of the well-being of open caste communities in Wales and their right to have their expectations realised in regard to the restoration of open caste sites, along which they have lived as neighbours, sometimes as far back as 1948.
Indeed, I know the Minister is fully cited on this issue, and in view of that, I thought what was, in the circumstances, a helpful response from the Minister in Westminster, much more helpful than what we've heard from the benches opposite in the course of this debate, these questions in this chamber this afternoon. I think there is scope there now for us to discuss the issue with the UK government to come to a solution. What people want to see with these open cast sites is a remedy being applied, restoration taking place. Certainly that is our intention in terms of, as a government to discuss this issue now with the UK government and to make sure that a problem that was created in Whitehall is resolved in Whitehall.
William Powell.
Diolch, Dwp Lawith. First Minister, members of the United Valleys Action Group have raised with me concerns that the developments of national significance that are envisaged in the current planning bill may serve to undermine the voice of communities faced with applications for open cast and similar development. In the context of this, and also given that your government has set its face against the possibility of any form of third-party right of appeal in such cases, what reassurance can you offer to communities, particularly coalfield communities, in this regard?
They need not fear the developments of national significance. The intention is, of course, to make sure that such developments are taken forward properly, to make sure that the resources are devoted to dealing with such applications, and then, of course, for the proper decision to be made. But they need not fear that this in some way interferes with their ability to put their case, whether it would be to a local authority in the current circumstances, or indeed to a minister in circumstances once the planning bill has been passed.
Question 5, Sandy Mewis.
Thank you. First Minister, will you provide an update on what the Welsh Government is doing to cut smoking rates in Wales?
Well, we've prioritised smoking cessation as part of our commitment to reduce the number of adult smokers in Wales to 16% by 2020, and services include the National Stop Smoking Wales service, run by Public Health Wales, and local pharmacy, GP and hospital services.
Thank you for that. Smoking rates in Wales have come down. That's the good news. But the recent report showing increased levels in lung cancer amongst women reinforces the message that more does need to be done. The introduction of plain packaging for cigarettes would help, and so will the ban on smoking in cars carrying children. So, First Minister, consultation on that proposal is now closed. Can I ask when we can expect the ban to be implemented so that young people will be protected from the dangers of second-hand smoke?
I can say to the member that the Minister will be making an announcement on this matter on Thursday.
Thank you. Darren Miller.
Pleased to hear that the Minister will be making an announcement on this later this week. It's something which I very much support. But one of the things which your government has said that it wants to do in order to reduce harm from tobacco is to introduce a ban on smoking, on the use of e-cigarettes in private and enclosed places. I'm very concerned about this because I do think that it is very clear from the evidence that the use of e-cigarettes has helped many people quit smoking altogether and therefore reduced harm from tobacco. Will your government relook at its proposals in order to ensure that the harmful effects from tobacco smoking can be reduced and that there is still the opportunity for e-cigarettes to be used in as widespread a places as they currently are?
No, and the reason is we can't recommend e-cigarettes as a smoking cessation aid until they've been proven to be effective as such, and they are a long way from being in that situation. So certainly the current situation is that that is not something we would be looking to consider in the absence of such evidence.
Question 6, Keith Davis.
Diolch Dwp Lawith. A wnaeth y Prif Weinidog roi'r wybodaeth ddiweddara am gefnogaeth Llywodraeth Cymru ar gyfer yr economi yng Nghymru.
Wel, ni'n cymryd amryw o gamau gefnogi economi Cymru gan gynnwys gamau helpu busnesau ddechrau a thyfu, a wneud yn haws iddyn nhw i gael cyllid a sicrhau wrth gwrs bod ni'n adolygu'r polisi ar drethu busnes yng Nghymru yn cefnogi masnach a buddsoddi ryngwladol ac wrth gwrs i sicrhau bod ni'n hyrwyddo Cymru i dwristiaid a rhywna sydd yn mynd i fuddsoddi yn ein gwlad.
Diolch, Prif Weinidog. Mae adroddiad diweddar o sefydliad Joseph Rowdry yn dweud bod 29.4% o deuluoedd Cymru yn byw ar lain y gyflog bywoliaeth. Ydych chi yn cytuno fi bod hi'n bwysig i godi treth ar y plastai yn y Deyrnas Unedig mwyn i ni wella economi Cymru mwyn cynnig cyfleoedd i'r teuluoedd tlotach?
Hynny'n iawn, ac wrth gwrs beth sy'n bwysig i gofio yw heb mwy o gyfartaledd dyw gwellhad yn yr economi ddim yn ei fod yn effeithiol. Yna beth ni'n gweld ar hyn o bryd. Ni'n gweld bod nhw'n gweud bod yr economi yn gwella, ond beth ni ddim yn gweld yw bod bobl cyffredin yn cael unrhyw fath o hwb yn ei incwm. A dyna pam wrth gwrs mae'n bwysig dros ben i sicrhau os mae pethau mynd i wella, bod pawb yn teimlo bod y gwellhad hynny yn rhywbeth sy'n berthnasol i nhw. I ni wrth gwrs mae gyda ni'r cynllun i daclo tlodi, a mae hwn yn rhywbeth sy'n cael i adolygu yn aml iawn yn sicrhau bod e'n fwy effeithiol a allir fod.
William Graham.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. Last week, the Federation of Master Builders highlighted that following the publication of their State of Trade survey for the last quarter of 2014, the increasing skills shortages across building trades. Will the First Minister outline what measures he intends to address these shortage of skills?
Well, we expect to work, of course, with them and also with the Construction Skills Network to make sure that the skills are there. We know that construction is expected to grow in Wales at a rate higher than the UK average, which of course is a testament to the policies that we have put in place as a government. And of course, more work is done in terms of has been done in terms of apprenticeships to make sure that we have the skills that are required. But we will of course work with the companies involved in construction and indeed with those involved in identifying the need for skills to make sure that the skills are there in order to fuel the increase in construction that we expect to see.
Rhys Iorwerth.
Diolch i'r Prylywydd i ddilyn cwestiwn Keith Davies. Ond i gwir ydy mae un cam arwyddocaol bwysig i geisio ymateb i'r tlodi, yn cynnwys tlodi mewn gwaith sy'n andal yn bodoli, ydy i ddilyn polisi Plaid Cymru o fyny gweld cyflog byw statudol yn cael ei gyflwyno yn hytrach na lleiaf swm cyflog, ac y bydde hynny ag yr effaith o helpu economi Cymru yn y pen draw hefyd.
Wel, wrth gwrs, ni'n gefnogol iawn o sicrhau bod hwnna yn digwydd yn y sector gyhoeddus. Does dim rhywun o gwbl yn y cynulliad ar hyn o bryd i wneud yn y sector breifat, ond y neges byddwn ni'n rhoi i gwmnïau. Mae'n neges mae'r Prif Weinidog David Cameron wedi gweud bod yn bwysig dros ben bod nhw'n sicrhau bod bobl yn gweld twf yn ei incwm os maen nhw'n mynd i deimlo bod pethau yn gwella.
Diolch, Deputy Llywydd. First Minister, last year the UK Government announced a £1.1 billion city deal for Glasgow and the Clyde Valley, and clearly a similar level of investment, a similar package could have a transformative effect on Wales's city regions too. What bids has the Welsh Government made to the UK Government for a city deal for example, the Cardiff city region?
Well, it's a matter ultimately for the city region to decide what it wishes to do in terms of such a bid. But we will be more than happy to support them if they wish to make such a bid in order to bring that money into Wales.
Question 7, Lindsay Whittle.
Diolch, Deputy Llywydd. Well, in view of your answers to previous questions, First Minister, I will emphasise the first word of my question. When is the ban on smoking in cars carrying children going to be implemented?
I refer the member to the answer I gave some moments ago. There will be an announcement on Thursday.
Well, it wasn't really clear. You merely indicated that the statement will be made later. So I can only assume that at least you obviously have the rights of children at heart. Maintaining that positive thought, when will you end the legalised violence against children in Wales by removing the defence of reasonable punishment?
Order, that is not relevant to this question. Christine Chapman.
Thank you. First Minister, a recent study has found that smoking remains a major risk factor in unexplained child deaths in Wales. Examining 45 cases across Wales, the study found that 25 children who died lived in smoking households. The report found that premature birth, low birth weight and co-sleeping could also be important contributory factors. However, the rate of smoking amongst parents was extremely high. I welcome the ban on smoking in cars with children, but what further steps will the Welsh Government take to reduce smoking in Wales, particularly during pregnancy and afterwards?
Well, I can say that 4 LHBs have worked together to improve their uptake of smoking cessation services by pregnant women in their areas. They tested different models. The interim results were encouraging. A final report on that work will be in place shortly. I understand that Cwmtaf has already decided to invest additional resources from their Flying Start budget over the next 2 years in their service delivery model before the full results become available. They've recruited 2 additional maternity support workers and a midwife to take that work forward, and that will enable their current project in the Rhondda pilot area to also include the whole of the Cynon Valley and Taffili.
Mohammed Asghar.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. First, Mr. Recent figure revealed that Wales has the 3rd highest rate of lung cancer in women among the 40 countries in the European Union. Does the First Minister agree that banning smoking in cars carrying children must be part of a series of measures designed to tackling smoking in Wales, such as banning smoking in hospital grounds and on the doors for entrance and exit on the ground floor in the hospital, where there's always welcoming people and they're smoking when you enter the hospital all the time in Wales? Thank you.
Well, without prejudice to the announcement that will be made on Thursday, the idea of banning smoking in cars when children are present has much to commend it.
Cwestiwn 8, Clear Griffith.
A wnaeth y Prif Weinidog ddatganiad am ddarpariaeth addysg gyfrwng Gymraeg.
Mae cynyddu mynediad i addysg cyfrwng Cymraeg yn flaenoriaeth i Lywodraeth Cymru, ac wrth gwrs mae awdurdodau lleol a dyletswydd i sicrhau bod yna gynllun strategol y Gymraeg mewn addysg gyda nhw.
Wel, diolch am eich ateb. Mae strategaeth addysg gyfrwng Gymraeg eich Llywodraeth chi hefyd yn dweud bod disgwyl i awdurdodau lleol gynllunio'n gynhwysfawr ar gyfer addysg cyfrwng Cymraeg, bod rhaid sicrhau cynaladwyedd addysg cyfrwng Cymraeg a diogelu ac atgyfnerthu darpariaeth cyfrwng Cymraeg, ac yn wir ystyried hynny wrth gyflwyno cynigion statudol i newid darpariaeth ysgolion. Ydych chi'n credu y bydde unrhyw awgrym bod cae ysgol categori 1 iaith Gymraeg a gorfodi'r plant hynny i fynd i ysgol categori 2, 2 ffrwd yn yr un dosbarth Cymraeg a Saesneg yn gydnaws ar polisi hwnnw?
Wel, yn gyntaf, wrth gwrs, mae hwnna'n fater i'r awdurdod lleol yn y lle cynta. Wy'n gwybod bod yr aelod yn sôn am sefyllfa ysgol Pentre Celyn a ysgol Llanfair. Mae yna ymgynghoriad statudol wy'n deall yn cymryd lle ar hyn o bryd, a mae hwnna dal i fod ar agor. Mi bwysig dros ben bod rhaid yn sicrhau bod nhw'n rhoi i barn i'r ymgynghoriad hynny. Wrth gofio unrhyw fath o ymyrraeth bydde yn cael ei wneud gan y Gweinidog addysg yn y dyfodol, lle ddim yn gweud ragor, ond mae'n bwysig dros ben, wrth gwrs, bod unrhyw awdurdod ddim yn wneud rhywbeth sydd yn gwanhau'r Gymraeg yn ei ardal.
Angela Burns.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. First Minister, the interim report evaluating the Welsh Medium Education Strategy says that while the strategy has led to a wide range of activities that support schools and the development of the education infrastructure, evidence suggests that the strategy is not as much of a priority to organisations as some other policy drivers. How will you, First Minister, ensure that the strategy does gain more traction with organisations, given that bilingualism is such an asset as well as a right?
Well, bear in mind, of course, local authorities are required to produce Welsh education strategic plans. They are required to set ambitious targets to boost the percentage of 7-year-old children who experience Welsh medium education. I can say that all 22 authorities have their plans in place. They've submitted their revised plans and an update on progress for us to approve or otherwise. So it is the case that they must submit their plans in order for ministers to be satisfied that the plans are robust, and then, of course, all local authorities will be expected to deliver on those plans.
Aled Roberts.
Diolch. Prif Weinidog, mae yna gynllun wedi cael ei gymeradwyo yn Wrecsam sydd yn cynnwys dim targedau a dim darpariaeth i ymateb i'r galw. Fydd yna dwf o ryw 100% o fewn y sector uwchradd dros y 2 neu 4 mlynedd nesaf. Dych chi'n deud bod yna adolygiad neu rhyw fath o arolwg yn cael ei wneud ar hyn o bryd. Dwi'n deall bod y Gweinidog i ymateb erbyn canol mis Chwefror. be fydd yn digwydd os ydy'r cynllunio yna yn dangos bod na ddim cynllunio gan cynghorydd lleol? Be fyddwch chi'n gwneud fel cyngor, fel Llywodraeth?
Cerwch nôl yn ewch eto, bydd yr ateb. Mae'n bwysig dros ben bod cynlluniau eu hunain yn cynlluniau da ac yn cynlluniau cryf. Os yna unrhyw gynllun sydd ddim yn dod lan i'r safonau i ni wedi rhoi i awdurdodau lleol, felly bydd y cynllun hynny ddim yn cael i ganiatáu. Heb siarad am unrhyw gynllun ar hyn o bryd, ond na beth yw'r sefyllfa cyffredinol ar egwyddorion cyffredinol bydd ni'n mabwysiadu.
Question 9, Mark Isherwood.
What support does the Welsh Government provide to ex-forces personnel?
Well, we are committed to ensuring our ex-forces personnel are supported and not disadvantaged due to their service, and the range of support and services available is detailed in our package of support for the armed forces community in Wales.
Thank you. Well, Welsh Government guidance only calls for local authorities to disregard the first £10 of a war pension payment when deciding how much an injured veteran should pay for their social care, placing certain veterans at a disadvantage due to the timing of their injury, where those injured prior to the 5th of April 2005 only have the first £10 of their compensation protected, but those injured after the 5th of April 2005 are able to keep their compensation in its entirety. Last week, the Finance and Business Minister stated it was unclear to her whose responsibility this would be, whether in terms of Welsh Government powers, local government and the UK Government, but this does result from Welsh Government guidance, and 2 local authorities in Wales at least are treating people fairly. What action will you therefore take as First Minister to ensure that this discrepancy is looked at as a matter of urgency?
I think the member raises an important issue. It deserves a full answer, and I will write to him with a full answer to his concerns.
Alan Fred Jones.
Diolch yn fawr. Mae merched a dynion ifanc sydd wedi ymuno ar fyddin a'r Llywodarbog wedi dioddau oherwydd brwdfrydedd Llywodraethau San Steffan i fynd i'r ryfel gan gynnwys rhyfel anghyfreithlon Irac, wrth gwrs. Dyn ni gweld colli bywyd, dyn ni wedi gweld anableddau difrifol ac wrth gwrs salwch meddyliol ymysg cyn aelodau o'r Llywodarbog. Sgandwch chi wybodaeth fel Llywodraeth, beth yw canran y cleifion iechyd meddwl yng Nghymru sydd yn gyn aelodau o'r Llywodarbog?
Wel, dim ffigur ynglyn â hwnna gyda fi nawr, ond na i ysgrifennu i'r aelod gyda'r ffigur hynny os mae un ar gael. Ond wrth gwrs ni yn falch o beth ni'n rhoi, gwasanaeth ni'n rhoi i rhywun sydd â problemau gyda iechyd meddylion. Ac wrth gwrs beth ni'n neud yw gweithio gyda'r cyrff sydd yn cynrychioli rhywun sydd wedi bod yn y lluoedd arfer mwyn sicrhau bod y gwasanaeth yna ar gael. Enghraifft, mae yna therapydd ar gael i rhywun sydd wedi bod yn y lluoedd arfog yn bob bwrdd iechyd yng Nghymru, a hwnna yw'r unig gwasanaeth cenedlaethol i rhywun sydd wedi bod yn y lluoedd arfog yng Ngwledydd y Deyrnas Unedig.
Question 10, Jeff Cuthbert.
Will the First Minister make a statement on the importance of volunteering in Wales?
Well, we greatly value those who freely contribute their time and expertise, of course, to help others. It's an important expression of citizenship, volunteering. Our new third sector scheme renews our commitment to support volunteers, and this year we provided over £3 million to demonstrate this through volunteering grants and funding for volunteer centres.
Thank you for that answer, First Minister. In a few weeks, we will be celebrating our own National St David's Day Awards. Meanwhile, in my constituency, the Aber Valley Heritage Group put in a tremendous amount of fundraising and hard work to ensure that the Welsh National Mining Memorial in St Genedd was opened in time for the centenary of the 1913 Universal Colliery disaster, and I know that you attended. Meanwhile, the volunteers of the Caerphilly Miners Centre for the Community have done an exemplary job raising funds to preserve and convert the town's former General Hospital into a multi-use facility for local people, and the Welsh Government supported both projects. So, First Minister, do you agree with me that these are just 2 examples of the excellent and committed work done by selfless volunteers across Wales, and it's important that their contribution is recognised?
I entirely agree that they're 2 good examples that demonstrate the vital contribution that volunteers make, of course, to community life in Wales. They're projects that I'm familiar with, particularly, of course, the Welsh National Mining Memorial. And we know that, of course, that without that army of volunteers, there are many people who would not receive the help that they want. There are many community projects that would not be taken forward, and there's an example that the member has given there of what robust volunteering and determined volunteering can achieve.
Question 11, Peter Black.
Will the First Minister make a statement on how the Welsh Government is raising educational standards for disadvantaged learners?
Well, we're committed to ensuring that all children in Wales reach their full educational potential, and children who are disadvantaged often require additional support, and of course we have strategies in place to do just that, the Pupil Deprivation Grant being one of them.
Thank you for that answer, First Minister. You know, of course, that as local authorities are setting the budgets, a number of them are aiming to cut the amount of money available to schools. Can you confirm, therefore, that your commitment to increase funding for education in schools by 1% above the block grants remains and will be delivered next year, and also that the local authorities will not be able to hide behind the pupil deprivation grant in delivering that commitment?
No, the Pupil Deprivation Grant is extra. We expect the Pupil Deprivation Grant is something that we should look as something that is on top of the money that we already provide for education. We also have to make sure, of course, that the 1% increase that we have already explained many times in this chamber is taken through. When any local authority feels that it cannot do that, it will have to explain why.
Thank you, First Minister. Item 2 is business statement and announcement.